different from what I'm usually posting on this channel. I do eventually want to get to a point where I'm doing DIY videos. I actually have a couple in the making process, so those will be coming soon. Today I'm actually going to do a cake tutorial. One of my hobbies is making cakes. I just sort of got into it because I wanted to make cakes for people that I love, and so I just sort of learned how to make kind of cool, fun cakes. I didn't go to culinary school or anything like that. I just really learned from watching YouTube videos and tutorials and, you know, communities online and things like that, and learning from people that do this professionally for a living. I have no desire to be a professional baker or to make cakes professionally. It's something I enjoy doing. It's, for me, it's just kind of a different form of art. So my husband just turned 30 last week, and I wanted to make a really cool 30th birthday cake, and so I was sort of brainstorming, thinking of something cool to do, and I thought, how cool would it be to make a galaxy cake? Like, you see all this galaxy stuff everywhere lately. It's so popular. I've even had galaxy nails this summer. And so I got online and I found some pictures of galaxy cakes, but from what I could tell, they were done with an airbrush. And I don't own an airbrush. It's not in my budget to buy an airbrush for this. And so I was sort of stumped. And then I remembered a YouTuber that I watch. Her name is Kristina Werner, and she does scrapbooking and card making videos, and I've watched her stuff for years. She recently did a card that was a galaxy card where she layered inks, and with the layering of the inks, she sort of made like a watercolor galaxy on paper, and it was so cool. And I'm actually going to link that video down below if you want to go see it. But it inspired me, and it got my juices flowing and kind of gave me like the basis for the technique. Now obviously paper and fondant are two very different things, so I kind of had to tweak it and do things a little bit differently. But if I hadn't seen her video, I don't think I would have ever figured out how to do it. It would have been just a nice thought, and I would have just moved on from there. But basically I couldn't find videos anywhere, tutorials, nothing online explaining how to make a galaxy cake. So I just decided to go ahead and film it, just in case somebody else out there in the internet is also wanting to make a galaxy cake. This might give you some inspiration on it. I'm going to start off by reminding you, I am not a professional. So the techniques and things I'm using are in no way professional. It's just things that I've learned from watching other people. So if you're a professional baker and you're watching this, please go easy on me. I'm just a novice, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start off with, you're gonna need your cake. I'm choosing to do a 2-tier cake, but you do want a cake that's completely covered in white fondant. This isn't gonna work on like a buttercream or anything like that. You do need a fondant covered cake for this. So you're gonna need food coloring. I used 2 shades of lighter blue, a purple, navy blue, and black. You're also gonna need vodka, and the vodka is used to kind of mix up the gel food coloring and help it to be like a thinner consistency. The vodka does evaporate. You're not gonna get inebriated eating the cake. Once you've got your vodka in with your food coloring, you just want to take your brush and pick up a little bit of the color, and I'm going to start with the purple since I'm using 2 shades of blue. I do want the purple to be pretty prominent, and we're just going to sort of make big blobs. It doesn't have to be perfect at all, and you'll see that as the colors start to mix, you start to see different shades of purples and blues coming out. And on a cake that you're doing that is a 2-tier cake or a 3-tier cake, however many tiers you're doing, the top tier is actually going to be the tier that gets noticed the most, just because there's not going to be anything else on top. If you're doing, say, like a 2-tier cake, your top tier is going to sit on top of the first tier, and so you're not going to see as much of it. So it's important that you make sure that your top tier is the one that's the smoothest, and you really do kind of have some room for error up top if it's going to be a cake where you're going to stack something else on top of it. So you'll see with the different blues that we used, as they sort of mix and blend with the vodka, you're getting a lot of different variations of blues and purples. And if you'd like to lighten up the color at any point, all you need to do is just add a little bit more vodka to your bowl, and that's just going to kind of help to water down the color. The vodka does evaporate pretty quickly, so that's why you'll notice as you're doing it, you're getting darker colors. So you just want to make sure that you've gotten any larger white areas filled in. And it looks like I did. Anywhere you see where the sort of the fondant has the naturally like porous areas where the white is showing through, don't stress about those, trying to fill those up with color, because that's actually going to work in our favor later on. Okay, and then all you need to do is just set it aside, and once it's completely dry, we can move on to the next step. So for this step, you'll notice that the cake is completely dried. You'll know that it's dry really when it's sort of matte. You don't see any more of like the shiny sticky part. It dried in about 3 or 4 hours. So for this step, you're going to need more food coloring. You'll need black and navy blue. And you're also going to need a spray bottle with some vodka in it, the same paintbrush from before, a plate or a bowl, and some wax paper. Okay, to start out, I've just cut some wax paper, and then I cut it sort of into a square shape, and then I also have rectangular strips. You don't need to be exact with it. You just want to make sure with your rectangular strips that they're about the same height as your cake is. You don't want them too much taller. You're just going to put some of your food coloring onto a plate. And I'm going to start with the navy blue, and then just grab some of the black and just sort of smear it all over. I like the blue just because it gives a little bit more dimension, but for the most part, your final product is going to be very black. So this piece is going to actually go onto the top of the cake, and since we're working with the top layer, this, like I said, is going to be the layer that gets the most attention and gets seen the most. After you've painted your wax paper, you're just going to take and spray it with your vodka. Okay, any of the bigger puddles of food coloring, you'll want to dab those up because we are going to pick up this wax paper, and we don't want for it to run or drip because that's going to defeat. Okay, so you just take your wax paper, you're going to pick it up and just quickly turn it over and just kind of smooth it out. And you can kind of wrap it around the sides as well. And then when you pick it up, you're going to see that you have a lot of black covering up those areas, and you can go back in and just sort of re-stamp with the same wax paper. Right now I feel like I'm at a point right now where the more I stamp, the more I'm just sort of picking up my same food coloring. So I'm going to leave it alone for a second, work on the sides, and then I'll come back to the top. Okay, so this is where you're going to use those strips that we cut out. And for this project, I'm not going to give you exact measurements or exact numbers of strips because it's really all just going to vary on what you want your cake to look like, and then also how much vodka is spraying out of your bottle, how much coloring you're putting on each strip. of spotted looking. And it really does look a little bit more random than it did before. So we're just gonna let it sit for a couple hours. You don't have to let it sit for that long, and if you're in a time crunch, this step would probably be just fine if you skipped the waiting portion of it. But I have some errands to go run, so I'm gonna go do those, and then when I come back, I'll move on to the next layer. Okay, now our cake's had a little bit of time. It's still wet in some places. If you'll notice, the black is still really shiny, but that's okay. It's just had some time kind of to where as you're touching it, it's not really picking up any color, just a little bit, but it's not like before where if you were to touch it, you would have color all over your fingers. We're gonna go in with some white icing color, which I know sounds kind of funny, but it's basically like white food coloring, except it's very opaque, almost like an acrylic paint. This step here is going to be even messier than our second step that we did. So there's a couple ways that you can go about doing this. The first one is just to take a large paintbrush, and it doesn't have to be as large as the one that I'm using here, or shaped exactly like it. But just taking a large paintbrush, and you'll notice that the coloring is very, very thin and almost kind of runny, which is perfect. So you can do this a couple ways. You can either try just sort of tapping the color. So you can try just sort of flicking it, just running your finger through, and that's going to give you a little bit of like a smaller, some smaller stars. So the white is just doing the stars. Then you can also take a smaller brush, something about like this size here, and you just take it and you sort of tap it on your finger and just let it fly. This step is super, super messy, but the coloring wipes off just fine. It's not like acrylic paint where it's going to stain anything. Okay, so when you're doing it, you want to make sure that you're kind of tapping it on. If you do any like, say, flinging of the paintbrush, you're going to end up with more like splatter paint effect, and that's not what you want. And you can also take just a smaller brush and go in and just add some of like your larger stars to your cake. Now if you go in and you watch Kristina's video where she shows you this technique using paper, you'll notice that to get the stars, she's doing the same that we did with the black. She's just doing that with white and applying it directly to the paper. However, that's not really going to work for us. It's not going to work for us because if we were to do that, we would end up with some bigger pieces, and then also the vodka would sort of re-wet the black, and you would have more of like a blurred effect and just a lot of gray. You wouldn't end up with these nice clean white dots that you're ending up with by doing it by hand or by the splatter paint method. Okay, so after you have all of your white stars placed on, it's time to add our dry gaze, which are just these really fun sort of silvery pearl sprinkles. Okay, so we're going to start with a mixture. This is just a little bit of fondant put in some water and just let to sit until the water starts to dissolve the fondant, and it really makes a good glue for putting things onto the other fondant. You can also use gum paste, or you can purchase pre-made glue, but I like to just do this. Okay, and I'm not going to put the dry gaze everywhere that there's a star, just in a few spots. I'm just going to take my little ball tool here, and using that, I'm just going to take and gently make just a small little hole. And you can do as many of these dragees. You could also skip this step if you choose to, or you can't find dragees, or don't have time to have any shipped to you. They're not necessary. I just thought they added a little bit of a fun extra touch. And to be honest, I've always wanted to use them in a project. And I just want to show you guys one other thing right here. I have a spot where when I was doing the painting, I got just a little bit too much white and it sort of splattered. And all you have to do is just spray a little bit of vodka onto the same paint that you were using earlier, the same food coloring, just to re-wet it on your plate. If it's dried up, you can just go in and just touch it up like that. Okay, I hope that was informative for you. Again, not my usual stuff, so I'm so sorry if you stopped by this channel in hopes of seeing me talk about hair or makeup or Birchbox or Ipsy or any of those things. But if it was helpful and it was informative, please let me know down below. And if you decide to make a galaxy cake, I want to see your galaxy cake. So please link me down below. Put the link for your Instagram or your TwitPic or whatever. I want to see your cake. I want to see what you did. And even better, if this inspired you to make some sort of other galaxy themed craft other than a cake, I want to see that too. I want to see what you guys are creating out there. So thank you so much for taking time to watch this. I hope that it was helpful, and you know, again, I'm not a professional. I thought I could help somebody else that was maybe struggling to figure out how to do this as well. So please comment down below, let me know what you thought, and if you like the videos and you think you'd like to see more, go ahead and subscribe, and then you'll be alerted when I post other videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.
To you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear John, happy birthday to you. Okay, blow.
Because again, I'm not a professional.